Have you ever watched someone make a split-second judgment about another person, only to be proven catastrophically wrong? In a world where assumptions often cloud reality, today's story reveals what happens when authority meets its match in wisdom. The blue and red lights flashed aggressively in her rearview mirror. Justice Vivian Marshall, 73, sighed quietly as she pulled her sedan to the curb of the quiet suburban street. Her weathered hands, marked by decades of turning the pages of constitutional law books, gripped the steering wheel firmly. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow across her dignified face, a face that had witnessed the civil rights movement firsthand, argued landmark cases, and now served at the highest court in the land. But Officer Blake Thompson didn't see any of that as he approached her window. All he registered was an elderly black woman in a modest car who, in his mind, didn't belong in this neighborhood. "License and registration," he demanded without greeting, his tone dripping with impatience. "No, ma'am. No explanation for the stop. Just presumption and thinly veiled contempt." What followed was 6 minutes of escalating disrespect, condescending remarks, exaggerated sighs, and dismissive glances. Little did Officer Thompson know that the woman he was treating with such disdain had helped shape the very laws he was sworn to uphold. The moment when he discovered her true identity, that's when everything changed. Before we continue, I'm curious. Have you ever witnessed someone being misjudged based on their appearance? Or perhaps you've been that person? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. Was there a moment of revelation that changed everything? Let's talk about it while I tell you how this encounter ended and the surprising aftermath that followed. Born in 1951 in Birmingham, Alabama, Justice Vivian Marshall witnessed the civil rights movement not as a distant historical event, but as her lived reality. The daughter of a high school teacher and a postal worker, she grew up understanding that education was both a privilege and a weapon against inequality. "My father always told me, they can take away your home, your possessions, even your dignity for a moment, but they can never take what's in your mind." Justice Marshall once recalled during a commencement speech at Howard University, her alma mater. After graduating first in her class from Howard Law School in 1976, Marshall faced a legal world that wasn't ready for her brilliance. Despite ranking at the top, she received only 3 job offers, while her white male counterparts averaged 15. She accepted a position at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, where she quickly distinguished herself arguing civil rights cases. By 1989, she had argued 17 cases before the Supreme Court, winning 14, an extraordinary record that caught the attention of President George H.W. Bush, who nominated her to the Federal Court of Appeals. Her confirmation hearings were marked by questions no white male nominee had ever faced, queries about her objectivity and whether she could rule without bias. Marshall answered each with the quiet strength that would become her trademark. "Justice isn't about who you are," she stated firmly. "It's about what the law demands." After 23 years on the appeals court, President Barack Obama nominated her to the Supreme Court in 2012, making her only the 3rd black woman to reach the nation's highest bench. Known for her meticulous opinions and incisive questioning during oral arguments, Justice Marshall built a reputation for intellectual rigor, coupled with practical wisdom. Her colleagues, regardless of ideological differences, speak of her with profound respect. Chief Justice Roberts once remarked, "Justice Marshall doesn't just understand the law, she understands its impact on real people's lives." Despite her position, Marshall remained committed to community engagement, frequently speaking at schools in underserved neighborhoods, reminding young people that her journey began in circumstances not unlike their own. That Thursday afternoon, Justice Marshall had just finished speaking at a youth legal education program in her old neighborhood. The event, held at her former high school, focused on encouraging minority students to consider careers in law. For 3 hours, she'd answered questions, shared stories from her journey, and witnessed the spark of possibility ignite in young eyes. Exhausted but fulfilled, she slipped away without fanfare, preferring to drive herself rather than accept the offered police escort. "I've been finding my own way home for 73 years, she had told the principal with a warm smile. The late afternoon sun was beginning to dip as Justice Marshall navigated her navy blue sedan through familiar streets. Her mind drifted to the bright young woman who'd asked about confronting bias in the courtroom, a question Marshall had faced throughout her career. The police cruiser appeared suddenly in her rearview mirror, lights flashing. Justice Marshall checked her speedometer. She was driving precisely at the limit. With practiced calm, she signaled and pulled to the curb, placing both hands visibly on the steering wheel, as her father had taught her decades ago. Officer Ryan Daniels approached, hand resting near his holster. No smile, no greeting. "License and registration," he demanded, voice flat. "May I ask why I've been stopped, officer?" Justice Marshall inquired politely. Officer Daniels' expression hardened. "You were swerving. License and registration now." She hadn't been swerving. Her decades of careful driving were a point of pride. But Justice Marshall reached slowly for her documents. "I said now, ma'am," Officer Daniels emphasized, his tone sharpening. "I'm moving carefully, officer." "No sudden movements," she replied evenly. When she handed over her license and registration, Officer Daniels barely glanced at them. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I live 6 blocks from here," she answered. Officer Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Really? This area is a bit expensive for—" He left the sentence unfinished, but his implication hung in the air. "For," Justice Marshall prompted. "Just stating facts," he replied curtly. "Step out of the vehicle, please." "On what grounds, officer? I smell alcohol." Justice Marshall, who hadn't consumed alcohol in over 40 years, felt a flash of indignation, but maintained her composure. "Officer Daniels, that's simply not possible." "Oh, so you know better than a police officer now?" His voice rose. "Exit the vehicle immediately." Several passers-by slowed, watching the interaction. One young man began recording with his phone. Throughout the escalating confrontation, Justice Marshall remained composed, her voice steady, her demeanor dignified. Years of facing down opposition in courtrooms across America had taught her that maintaining calm was both a strategy and a statement. "Very well, officer," she said, carefully opening her door. "But I would like to state clearly that I have consumed no alcohol whatsoever." While Justice Marshall's experience might seem extraordinary, data tells us it's distressingly common. A 2023 study by the National Institute of Justice found that Black Americans over 65 are 4 times more likely to be stopped by police in predominantly white neighborhoods than their white counterparts, with over 70% of these stops resulting in no citation or arrest. For elderly Black individuals, these encounters carry unique burdens. Many lived through the Jim Crow era and the Civil Rights Movement, contexts that shape how they experience such interactions. Clinical psychologist Dr. Keisha Williams explains, "When an elderly Black person is profiled or disrespected by authorities, it's not experienced as an isolated incident, but as part of a continuous historical narrative they've personally witnessed." The psychological effects can be severe. Research from the American Journal of Public Health shows that discriminatory encounters trigger elevated stress hormones, increased blood pressure, and symptoms of anxiety that can persist for weeks after the event. For older individuals, these physiological responses pose serious health risks. I'm curious, have you ever witnessed someone being treated differently based solely on their appearance? Or maybe you've experienced it yourself? Hit pause right now and share your thoughts in the comments. Has watching this story made you reflect on interactions you've seen or experienced? I read every comment, and your perspectives matter. Beyond statistics and health impacts lies something more fundamental: human dignity. When Officer Daniels demanded Justice Marshall exit her vehicle without cause, he wasn't just potentially violating legal protocols, he was challenging her right to be treated with basic respect. This reflects broader societal questions about who deserves dignity by default and who must earn it through credentials, accomplishments, or status. Justice Marshall's forthcoming revelation would dramatically highlight this disparity, but the core issue remains: respect shouldn't be conditional on titles or positions. It should be the starting point for all human interaction. As we return to our story, keep this question in mind. If Officer Daniels had known who she was from the beginning, would his behavior have been different? And if so, why should that matter? Standing beside her car, Justice Marshall maintained perfect posture, a habit from decades of courtroom appearances. Officer Daniels circled her vehicle, flashlight in hand despite the daylight, scrutinizing every detail. "Mind telling me where you got this car, ma'am?" he asked, emphasizing "ma'am" with subtle mockery. "I purchased it 3 years ago," she replied evenly. He tapped the hood. "Pretty nice vehicle for someone your age. Registration says it's paid off, too." "I've worked hard throughout my life, Officer Daniels." His laugh was short and dismissive. "What kind of work does an elderly lady do that pays for a car like this?" Before she could respond, he continued his inspection, peering through windows and checking tire treads, actions well beyond the scope of a routine traffic stop for alleged swerving. "Stand over here while I run your information," he directed, pointing toward the curb. The small crowd of onlookers had grown to 7 people, most watching quietly, 2 recording with phones. Justice Marshall complied, standing patiently as minutes passed. Her phone, still in the cup holder inside her car, began to ring. The sound caught Officer Daniels' attention as he returned from his cruiser. "Someone calling you?" he asked, glancing through the window at the illuminated screen. "Must be important." "It likely is," she replied. "May I answer it?" "No, you may not," he snapped. "We're in the middle of a stop." The phone stopped ringing, then immediately began again. Officer Daniels leaned down to look at the screen, his expression freezing as he read the caller ID. "Chief Justice Roberts." His eyes darted from the phone to Justice Marshall, confusion evident. Why would the Chief Justice be calling you?" For the first time, a slight smile crossed Justice Marshall's face. "We have a conference call scheduled for 5:30. I appear to be running late." Officer Daniels' demeanor shifted instantly. "I don't understand." Another call came through, this time from Clerk of Court. The officer's face paled. "Officer Daniels," she said calmly, "my identification shows my name as Vivian Marshall. What it doesn't show is my full title, Associate Justice Vivian Marshall of the United States Supreme Court." The officer's jaw literally dropped. He blinked rapidly, looking from the ID in his hand back to her face, recognition finally dawning. "Justice Marshall?" he stammered. "The Justice Marshall?" "Yes, officer," a bystander called out. "That's why she lives in this neighborhood, officer." Another added, "She's on the Supreme Court, man." Officer Daniels appeared physically smaller suddenly, his authoritative stance deflating. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I didn't realize." Clearly, Justice Marshall interjected, her voice firm but not unkind. "Now, if you've completed your investigation of my alleged traffic violation, I have an important call to return." The crowd had doubled in size, whispers spreading quickly. Officer Daniels struggled to regain composure. "Of course, ma'am, Your Honor, you're free to go." He hastily returned her documents. "There's no violation. It was a mistake." Justice Marshall accepted her license and registration with dignity. "Officer Daniels, mistakes happen. What matters is what we learn from them." She turned toward her car door, then paused. "And for the record, I've been a justice for 11 years, a federal judge for 23 before that, and an attorney for 47 years total. That's how I afford this car." By the time Justice Marshall settled back into her car, Officer Daniels had transformed from intimidating authority figure to apologetic subordinate. His entire demeanor shifted, shoulders hunched, voice softened, hands suddenly fidgety. "Your Honor, please accept my deepest apologies," he said, leaning toward her window. "If there's anything I can do—" Justice Marshall held up her hand gently. "What you can do, Officer Daniels, is remember this moment the next time you approach someone who doesn't match your expectations of who belongs in a neighborhood." She started her engine, but offered one final thought. "Our justice system works only when those who enforce the law recognize the humanity in every person they encounter, regardless of age, race, or appearance." With quiet dignity, she drove away, leaving Officer Daniels standing motionless by the curb, surrounded by murmuring onlookers. Within hours, 3 different videos of the encounter appeared online. By morning, the clips had been viewed millions of times, with headlines proclaiming, "Supreme Court Justice racially profiled by local police," and "Watch officer's reaction when he realizes who he's harassing." The police department issued a statement by noon the following day. "We acknowledge this unfortunate incident involving Justice Marshall and are conducting a thorough review of Officer Daniels' actions." This encounter does not reflect our department's values or training protocols. Public reaction was swift and divided. Many called for Officer Daniels' immediate termination, while others defended him, claiming he was just doing his job. Political commentators seized the moment, each framing the incident to fit their preferred narratives. Notably absent from the public discourse was Justice Marshall herself, who declined all interview requests. Her only statement came through her office. Justice Marshall views this as a private matter and an opportunity for reflection on larger societal issues, not as a platform for personal grievance. Meanwhile, colleagues on the Supreme Court expressed private outrage. Justice Elena Kagan was overheard saying, "If they treat Vivian this way, one of the most powerful jurists in America, imagine how they treat others without her position or resources." Would you have handled this situation differently if you were in Justice Marshall's position, or if you were Officer Daniels? Take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have maintained such composure in the face of disrespect, or would you have responded differently? Your perspective matters to this conversation, and I'm genuinely curious what you think about Justice Marshall's response. 3 weeks after the incident, something unexpected happened. Justice Marshall requested a private meeting with Officer Daniels and the police chief. No attorneys, no press, just a conversation. In that 2-hour meeting, Justice Marshall did something remarkable. She listened. She asked Officer Daniels about his training, his experiences, and his perspective on that day. Rather than demanding punishment, she proposed education. "This isn't about one officer or one traffic stop," she later explained to her law clerks. "It's about systems that allow bias to flourish unchecked." Firing Officer Daniels wouldn't address the root issue. Instead, Justice Marshall offered to work with the department to develop new training protocols. She connected police leadership with experts in implicit bias from Georgetown Law Center and helped secure funding for body cameras and community engagement programs. The resulting Marshall Initiative transformed the department's approach to training. New officers now participate in community immersion programs, spending time in neighborhoods they serve before ever wearing a badge. Veteran personnel undergo quarterly bias recognition workshops and regular community feedback sessions. Meanwhile, the national conversation evolved beyond the viral moment. Legal scholars analyzed the encounter through constitutional lenses, citing Fourth Amendment concerns and equal protection principles. Civil rights organizations used the incident in educational materials about racial profiling. What truly captured public attention, however, was Officer Daniels' journey. In an unusual move, he requested permission to speak publicly about his experience. During a community forum 6 months after the incident, he addressed a packed auditorium. "I was wrong that day, not just procedurally but fundamentally," he admitted. "I looked at Justice Marshall and made instant assumptions based on her age and race. I didn't see her humanity first. I saw categories, stereotypes." His voice shaking, he continued, "Justice Marshall could have ended my career with one phone call. Instead, she chose to educate me. She showed me grace I didn't deserve but desperately needed." Officer Daniels became an advocate within the department, mentoring younger officers and sharing his experience during training sessions. His transformation, from embodying the problem to working towards solutions, offered a powerful narrative about the possibility of growth and change. Justice Marshall herself referenced the incident only once publicly, during a graduation address at a historically black law school. The measure of justice isn't how we treat those who impress us, but how we respond to those who don't. True justice begins with recognizing the humanity in every person, especially those different from ourselves. Justice Marshall's story offers us more than just a moment of vindication. It provides profound lessons about the society we live in and the one we aspire to create. First, consider how quickly assumptions shape our interactions. One glance led Officer Daniels to dismiss Justice Marshall's dignity, yet those same assumptions crumbled instantly when her position was revealed. This raises an essential question. Why should respect depend on status? True equality means extending dignity to everyone, regardless of their titles or achievements. Second, Justice Marshall's response demonstrates the transformative power of grace. She could have demanded punishment but chose education instead. By responding to humiliation with wisdom rather than vengeance, she created space for genuine change, not just for one officer, but for an entire department and the community they serve. The implications extend far beyond this single encounter. When institutions acknowledge bias and actively work to address it, we move closer to a justice system worthy of its name. Justice Marshall's approach reminds us that lasting change requires both accountability and compassion. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your engagement helps these important stories reach more people. Subscribe to join our community dedicated to highlighting these crucial narratives of justice, dignity, and transformation. Next week, we'll explore another powerful story. Hospital refuses to help Black child until father reveals he's the new hospital director. It's another reminder that appearances often deceive, and assumptions can have life-altering consequences. You won't want to miss it.